Hello and welcome to the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. This is episode 27. My name is Tom Luongo and we have a lot to talk about. It's Tuesday, March 31st. It's the end of Q1 and it may be the end of the world as we have known it. COVID-19 fever has gripped our political elites, and the big question is, does anyone really have any understanding of what's been unleashed in the last couple of weeks? We're going to discuss that and more, but before I do, I want to remind you that you can follow my work over at my blog at tomluongo.me. On Twitter, you can find me at TFL1728. Live streams, they happen on YouTube and DLive.tv every Monday night at 8 p.m. and Friday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Warning, I'm a bad boy. I've got a potty mouth. This is my therapy hour, and I'm not afraid to use any of it. You can also support verified publishers like me by downloading and installing the Brave browser, where you can get paid in crypto tokens called BAT for voluntarily being served internet advertising as opposed to feeding the Google beast. Brave protects your online privacy while saving you time and bandwidth by blocking all those pesky data snoopers, etc. that are feeding the growing surveillance state. You can use my referral code at brave.com/Tom405 to support the podcast directly. If you use Brave for more than 30 days, I'll get the referral fee. And lastly, you can join over 400 people who now support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Gold, Goats, and Guns. And a big shout out to all those new patrons. You are all singularly and individually truly appreciated. And you can sign up there for both the twice weekly market reports, which are published every Wednesday and Sunday. They're kind of private podcasts. And then you can also sign up for the Gold, Goats, and Guns monthly newsletter, which is designed to wrap up all this geopolitical chaos, the global macroeconomics, shifting cultural trends, into a portfolio strategy designed to help you make sense of a world going mad. All right. A couple of programming notes. I did a long discussion with Alex Mercouris of the Duran over the weekend with my good friend Crypto Rich. That will be linked in the podcast below as a kind of supplemental show notes. I think today's may be a little light in terms of content. We'll see how long I decide to ramble. So let's get on with the show. The Coronapocalypse is more than just a health crisis, okay? I've been calling this the Coronapocalypse now for a couple of weeks. I think it's an apt term. I saw a meme this morning. What I'd always pictured myself as during the apocalypse, picture of Mad Max with his great Australian cattle dog. What I actually look like. And it's the dude from The Big Lebowski drinking milk in the first scene of the movie. So, it's really kind of funny, but at the same time, it does speak to this bifurcation between how we see ourselves and who we actually are. And that's the kind of the theme of what's going on here in the podcast this morning. We're going to talk about the generational divide, I think, that is going to play itself out as we emerge from our homes and we see what it is that these people have done in our name and with our money and our capital and our lives and our institutions while we were shut away. It's very, very scary, in my opinion. At the same time, the pandemic is itself very scary. But do we warrant the wholesale nationalization of our capital markets and our healthcare system and most of our strategic infrastructure and the complete and utter federalization of the European Union morphing into 21st century version of the USSR? Is this the price we're willing to pay to not get a virus with a 0.4 to 0.6% death rate? Because those are the numbers we're seeing in the places that have done large-scale random testing. While this thing may be highly communicable and everybody may be getting infected, the reality is that this is more of a healthcare infrastructure problem than it is a global pandemic of epic proportions, like the Andromeda strain or the simian flu from the Planet of the Apes movies. That's not what we're dealing with here. And so I think that the way I'm seeing this and the way I'm laying this out, it's very obvious to me that there's a generational divide, not only in our political response to this, but in our emotional response to it as well. The baby boomers are still in charge, and they're holding on to power, clinging to it in ways that are unnatural. When you look at people like Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the people in the European Union and pulling the strings behind the scenes, people like Soros and the Clintons and all of these people, you realize that this is born of the fragility of their psyche coming out of World War II. The post-World War II institutional order was built as a response to the horrors of World War II and the last fourth turning in Strauss and Howe terms. And this thing is exposing not only their fragility of the institutions themselves, but of the psyche of the people who built these institutions in the first place, or who are now the managers of these people. Not the ones who built it, but certainly the ones who are the managers of them today, and are desperate to try and complete the narrative, get us over the line into that brave new world that they really do believe is better than the one that we currently occupy. Well, the problem with that is that is incredibly utopian. It's also fundamentally against the laws of nature, economics, human behavior, and all the rest of it. As a trained scientist and as a person who's always been much more interested in the lessons of the laws, the physical laws of the universe, thermodynamics, quantum mechanics, and the rest of it, from my perspective, I've always been interested in them from a philosophical perspective and how that applies directly to human behavior than just directly to manipulating matter, even though those effectively at the end of the day are exactly the same things. And I can tell you, I've been studying these things from this perspective since I'm a teenager, and watching this stuff play out in this way is deeply disturbing. They created an idealized or stylized reality. It's reflected in the post-World War II art. It's deeply embedded in our culture and politics. It's everywhere. And we see it today in the aging baby boomers who, of course, as the prophet generation, become didactic and inflexible as they get older. They're supposed to become wise statesmen, and they don't. They have a tendency and a possibility, a distinct possibility of becoming didactic, inflexible, and power mad. And that's where they are today. And it shows itself up on both sides of the political spectrum. It's zero tolerance. It's ideological possession. It's left brain dominant thinking, whatever version of this you want to call it. We have zero tolerance for cultural malaise and situational ethics, and the rest of it is promulgated by the commies on the left within the right. And then we have the exact same thing, the incredible openness and cries of fascism at any restriction on behavior by the ideologically possessed left. It's the same thing from two different perspectives. It's the same fundamental problem. It's a zero tolerance because of fear. They don't have the ability to integrate, or have never truly integrated, their shadows in a Jungian sense. And at a societal level, our politics have now been completely and utterly corrupted by this insane thinking. And it's been stoked cynically at every level by the people standing behind our leaders in order to try and usher in their brave new world. And it scares me that they've locked us in our homes, feeding us Soma via Netflix in order to keep us locked down on fear, out of work for a couple days. And, the truth of the matter is that so many people here in America are exhausted, that this is the kind of vacation that we all kind of need. But at the same time, look at what they're doing. Every day, they come up with some new plan to spend trillions of dollars they don't have, or create some new emergency protocol or some new emergency funding mechanism within the Federal Reserve. Every day it's something different. This morning it's now the Fed is opening up, becoming the central bank of the world, opening up swap lines with foreign central banks, allowing them to belly up to the discount window. Foreign central banks bellying up to the discount window because the world is so terminally short dollars. What else are they going to do at this point? This is not authority that I have. But they're just taking it because they don't have any other options at this point that they see without letting the entire thing collapse. And I've talked about the power of deflation in previous podcasts and in previous articles, and why I think it's the way forward for us as a species, and that the pain we're going to go through here is exactly the remedy we need in order to toughen up, both psychologically, culturally, politically, and as a people. We have become children in so many ways. And the people who are leading us are nothing more than 85-year-old children who still think that they are good people because they ended the Vietnam War back in the 60s. You didn't end the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War ended itself, just like Afghanistan is going to end itself. Eventually, you can't pay for it anymore. The Vietnam War broke the global monetary system. It had to be rebuilt. It's this kind of utopian fantasist and an unbelievable sense of narcissism that runs through all of the mal-educated and upper middle class boomers that I meet. It drives me insane because they refuse to accept reality, which is that we, Gen X, are coming. And they still treat us like wayward children that they sat in front of the television set and ignored. And they still talk down to us today. When we're looking at them going, you people have $63,000 in your freaking 401ks and you expect us to pay for your nursing home care. And we're like, no, thankfully I don't have that issue. My parents were silent generation. They took care of themselves. But I get it. I get the anger that so many of my peer group have, and that they're not willing to do this. They're like, dude, you wasted your entire life and now you want me to bail you out? You weren't there for me when I was a freaking kid. Now you want me to bail you out? Seriously, think about the kids from the Goonies and then project them to today. If they were to do the Goonies as parents today, their parents now, imagine this, the Goonies 2, okay? They got to go save their boomer parents from the pirates and, leave their kids at home to go do that. Like, I don't think that movie lasts more than 15 minutes. It'd be more like, well, Ma, no, we saved your asses and we saved the house back in the first movie because you were incompetent. I think, you get to stay locked up with the pirates and I'm going to take care of my kids. That's what they're scared of at every level. And what's really scary is that in order for them to maintain what vestiges of power they have, because they are deathly afraid of what's coming behind that, which is us. They're using the COVID-19 Coronapocalypse as a way to prey on people's denial of their own shadow in order to justify a massive power grab. They are preying on our fear of death while reminding us how quickly our fragile civilization can fall into disrepair and violence. Like, they haven't stoked us to this point in the first place. They haven't stoked the millennials to the point of putting on masks and grabbing freaking wrenches and beating people in the streets for wearing a MAGA hat. This was all planned. This is all part of their inability to deal with and justify reality. The reality is that the pandemic is going to usher in a new world, whether they like it or not. And we're going to come out of this looking at each other much differently than we did before. Maybe in many ways, it's very unfortunate. I think it's going to be a lot clearer as to what's going on. But there's also going to be a lot more, whatever. Okay, boomer. Yes, Karen, you can speak to the manager. Yeah, a lot of that's going to happen here. Look, the myth of globalism, gone. The myth of global government, not going to happen. Okay? It's not going to happen. Technology is going to change our anachronistic supply chains and the way we organize labor. Class A commercial property, office space, gone as a concept. So many people are going to start working from home and demand to work from home and be willing to work for 80 cents on the dollar that they were before to work from home because they're going to realize really quickly how much money they save by not having to commute and go work in an office every day. How much money they don't have to spend. Dry cleaners are going to, become a thing of the past. Well, not a thing of the past, but they're certainly going to drop. Their business is going to drop. Upper middle class restaurants, business class restaurants, Darden, not a stock I would be buying, even after we come out of our homes. Because business lunches, what are we talking about here? We have Zoom, we have Skype, we have all these other technologies. We don't need that stuff anymore. I converse with people all over the world from the privacy of my office, surrounded by guitars and irrelevancies. It's great. And I talk to some of the most powerful minds in the world. I don't need to go meet them in an Olive Garden. I do like meeting them, not at the Olive Garden, mind you, but I do like meeting some of my subscribers and people in person. It's very important to see people directly, but we have very powerful tools at our disposal today that we didn't have 20 years ago. And all that's going to change. The complete and utter economic collapse that they have ushered in order to try and keep their system running a little bit longer is actually sowing the seeds for their own destruction, because we're all going to look up and go, why is our healthcare system so freaking backwards? Why are we making t-shirts in Vietnam when we can do on-demand clothing in Atlanta? Like, why are we doing this? We have 3D printers, for Christ's sake. Why do we need to buy irrelevant pieces of plastic tchotchke crap made in China by the billion, as opposed to 10 or 12 really nice things that we get in 3 days as opposed to 2? It's like, this stuff's coming. So while all of that's great, we're also going to see a reversion to tribalism. We're going to see a reversal back to localism. And look, the left is right when they say, coexist, think locally, act globally, all that stuff. They're kind of right. Just take out the act globally thing. Stop being utopian fantasists. Just take care of yourself and let the distributed neural network that is the free market figure out where capital needs to go and where things need to go. And stop being so unbelievably arrogant and narcissistic as to think that you have any control over how the freaking planet operates or how society operates, because it doesn't. And you don't. A little humility goes a long way. And I can tell you that this is the fundamental thing that is going to express itself over the course of the next 2 generations as they take power. The days of all of this grandiose narcissistic thinking of like, oh my God, we're going to destroy the planet, is going away. It's just going away. It's idiotic. And I get, and don't ever forget that as much as they decry tribalism and nationalism or whatever you want to call it, it's a coherent defensive mechanism and a valid survival strategy when you are faced with an existential threat. It's just the way it is. But it means that we're dealing with generational tribalism now. Gen X is going to defend itself real soon now against the depredations of the baby boomers. Or the baby boomers are going to just blow even more bubbles, and within 3 to 4 years, we're all going to look at it and go, no, you know what, like what you guys were talking, no, never mind. Tear it all down. We don't want any of it. And I'm sorry, but I'm not paying for your insulin anymore. Get off the carbs. Grow a pair. Grow up. What's going on? That's what's happening. So the problem here is that we've deluded ourselves into thinking that we live in a world of plenty, that opportunity cost doesn't matter anymore, that the previous laws of economics don't apply to us because we're insouciant, smart people who have conquered scarcity and have conquered nature. We haven't. COVID-19 is directly telling us we haven't conquered dick. We can't even deal with a simple little coronavirus. We can't deal with what amounts to a really bad cold that exacerbates existing conditions. I'm not just saying it's just a flu, bro. No, I mean, it's serious. But at the end of the day, it's not Ebola. You're not going to start bleeding from your eyes and die in 20 minutes. And if this scares everybody into maybe thinking about eating better and taking better care of themselves and understanding that, you know, if you back away from the veggie burger and you put down the soy milk, maybe, just maybe, you might have an immune system that can fight this thing off. 100 years worth of really bad diet recommendations. I can go on about this stuff until what's left of my hair turns gray. We have to be able to be brave enough to weigh cost versus benefits. We're going to get very close to a moment in this country where we're going to be doing triage and allowing people to die, lay in beds and say, well, you know, good luck. And we are not prepared for that from a societal, psychic perspective. We are way too infantilized for this. The nomad generation, my generation, Gen X, we're prepared for it. But the boomers are not. The boomers still have power. And they're freaking out. And they're the ones freaking out. And you can see why they're grabbing for power at the same time as they're trying to bail everybody out and bribe us with more free stuff to try and prove to us that they love us. You know, Teotihuacan is not just a cool affect. The end of the world as we know it isn't just some cool Gen X coping mechanism. It's a generational ethos. Okay? We get it. We've been living under an economic and cultural sword of Damocles our entire lives, only forestalled by things like great stories like Star Wars. But Star Wars, the fairy tale of Star Wars of the 70s, has morphed into the horrific stories for the millennials of Harry Potter and the Hunger Games. I mean, look at where those big stories morphed into and what people gravitated towards. And if you don't think that the millennials understand what we've been telling them, they get it. They're not happy about it either. They're really angry about it. And that generational divide, when we get there, is going to be very interesting. But I got news for you. Our generation, Gen X, is not going to want to hold on to power. We're going to be willing to absolutely just tear it all down. You guys, you know, fine, whatever. Do what you need to do. Have fun. We've already checked out. Because that's who we are. We really are, in our heads, Mad Max and the Road Warrior. Yeah, we're all the dude, but not in our heads. Not where it matters. No generation in 300 years has been more prepared for the end of the world than ours. We grew up under the the threat of nuclear war. We grew up under the destruction of the U.S. dollar during the 70s. We grew up with the false promise of the 80s. We were having our kids during the Y2K breakdown and post 9/11 world in the 90s and the early aughts. Our kids are hitting high school, you know, and we're all getting thrown out of our homes. Yeah, we're ready for it. Like, stop and think about it. And then look at people like Pelosi and tell me that they're not trying to bribe us with gibs. Look, we're like that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Classic Gen X movie. Indiana Jones is a classic Gen X style hero. Terribly flawed, very selfish, and yet ultimately at the end of the day will do the right thing if he absolutely has to. But you remember that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark right after Marion supposedly got killed? You know, he shot the truck and the truck exploded and Marion died. And then the next scene, there's Indy in the bar getting plastered. Remember that scene? It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's like the quintessential moment of what Harrison Ford is. The image of Harrison Ford. Because Harrison Ford's persona is as Mr. Competent, who's also very dangerous. He's like the very definition of the classical definition of the word meek, like Jordan Peterson talks about, right? Where a man who has copious weapons and knows exactly when and how to use them. But when Indy is broken down to his lowest level because he got somebody he cares about deeply killed in his mind, Belloc comes to meet him there and they start talking. And Belloc is going on and on and on about the Ark and how it's a way to talk to God and all this stuff. And Indy just looks at him and goes, you want to talk to God? Let's go see him together. I've got nothing better to do. That's the boomers and Gen X in a small, beautiful, encapsulated scene. It's so good. You want to talk to God? Let's go see him together. I've got nothing better to do. That line's been going through my head for weeks now. They aspire to something, the baby boomers, that they do not understand. They are Icarus, and we're the cleanup crew wiping them off the parking lot. And as this is going on, $6 trillion, $10 trillion, $20 trillion, they still deny their shadows. They still deny their failure as leaders and parents. The stimulus is just a beginning. I see this morning on Zero Hedge, Pelosi's now talking for free about full-on free money from trees and a complete takeover of the U.S. healthcare system. She's insane. I don't even think she believes any of it anymore, and I don't even care. But you know that's where they're going. The EU is failing trying to keep the dream alive. They're pitting Germans and Italians against each other, mass hysteria, dogs and cats, the whole 9 yards. I'm just waiting for Bill Murray to show up and go, can we get a reset? You know, this isn't power and politics for them anymore. This is about that plus ideology. They see the EU as some apotheosis of their entire generational imprint. And all it is a nasty dystopian Kafkaesque bureaucracy of fighting internecine fiefdoms who don't give a damn about people dying in hospital beds in Milan. I've said this before. Don't get Italians angry at you. You disrespect Italians because you decided you wanted to play politics, French President Emmanuel Macron. The Italians already hate the French anyway, and now you're going to kill their 84-year-old Italian grandmother? You think you're going to get anything from them? Other than 2 fingers up and, picking up rifles? It's why Matteo Salvini is so dangerous to them. He's Gen X Italian. It's all this downstream of this post-World War II horror. Bailing people out and buying them goodies doesn't save societies. It doesn't save families from an absentee father or an absentee mom. It doesn't save societies from ruin either. People need a purpose. They need direction. They need to know what gives their lives meaning. Free money from trees devalues their labor and devalues their time to zero. It abstracts the cost of printing new monetary units down to zero and then expects to safeguard that value through the wise and insouciant application of tax policy. If there was ever a perversion of human endeavor so thoroughly profound as modern monetary theory, I don't know what it is. The denial of our basic humanity, the good and the bad, the left and the right, the yin and the yang, all of that is what the problem is now. And locking people in their homes for 3 months isn't a solution. The virus will still be out there and you'll still get it. You can scream you'll flatten the curve all you want, but I got news for you. This thing's going to be back in 6 months. We're going to be living with this and variations on it forever now. And we either accept that and realize that the way we've been spending money on healthcare systems and health management has been wrong. And what we really need is acute care. What we don't need is an infantilized, overcomplicated Oedipal complex of a system that just substitutes out for an absentee mom. I mean, look at cradle-to-grave health insurance as a concept. What is it other than a manifestation as policy of the Oedipal mother? Give me a break. It's ridiculous. It's so sad. And I'm telling you, when we walk out of our homes and we see what they've done after this is all over, and we come out of our house after we've spent our couple of weeks or a month recharging our batteries, after having been on a debt treadmill for so long, going, you know what? I'm not paying it. I don't have a job. I don't care. I ain't paying it. You give me I want my Corona bucks, and I'm going to buy food with it, and I'm not paying my mortgage. We're going to look up and see what world they wrought afterwards. after we sat down and were spoon-fed irrelevant, storyless garbage on Netflix, we're going to be angry. And that's the best possible outcome. Okay, this has been the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for Tuesday, March 31st, 2020. If you like what you heard today, please like this, subscribe to it on Spreaker or iTunes or Podcast Addict or whatever it is that is your favorite podcast listening platform. I will be back next Tuesday. Most likely, I'm going to try and set it up with a very special guest, and we're going to talk about more of the same things, but from a different perspective. You guys take care. You be well. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.